Okay. Hi, this is Luke T. Barnett. You're tuning into Author Life, and I'm here with Jason Anspach and Nick Cole, authors of Galaxy's Edge, which is a huge success. I believe there's 9 books on the main series so far, and is there 3 in the 3 extra books? No.
4, right? 4 extra books.
Okay, so I saw the 2 Tyrus Rex books.
Yep.
And there was, what else is there?
Order of the Centurion and
Okay.
Imperator.
Oh, Imperator's an extra one. Okay, I thought that was part of the main series.
Yes.
Okay.
No, the audiobooks make you think that because of the way they released it, but it's a standalone.
Okay. Yeah, I've read the first 3, first trilogy, and then I reread them again, and I'm listening to them again for the 3rd time. Like they're just the stories are really, really good. I was looking at the writing the other day, and this is before I contacted you, which made me contact you. It's like looking at my own writing and look at your writing and just thinking how well crafted the story is and how well written it is. It doesn't seem any clunky sentences or anything like that. So I was wondering what, well, I'll get that in a minute. Like, what inspired you guys? I just talked to Nick about this, but what inspired you guys to write Galaxy's Edge?
What did you tell him, Nick? Like, are we giving the real story or are we giving the PR story?
Whatever one you want to give me, that's fine.
I just told him money, but you give him the real story that we officially crafted.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So no, it wasn't about money. Of course not. Nick and I were both at a point in our writing careers where we weren't 100% sure that we were headed down the right path. Like if you read my first books, they're like supernatural detective, almost like with a little bit of like romantic comedy. So they're fun like literature books, but for some reason, like hundreds of thousands of people didn't want to buy that book. And so I was like, man, I'm not sure what I should do next. And I was talking to Nick, and we were friends by then, and we were playing D&D together. And he said, well, what do you want to write? And I was like, I don't know, Star Wars, basically, you know. And so he said, well, write that. And I was like, you can't write Star Wars. He's like, no, but you can create your own sort of thing. And so we started working together on that because I was like, well, will you help me? Because at that point, you know, I had 3 novels. I was super green. And Nick's advice and guidance was huge. It was a huge part of my development. So I said, will you help me do that? So he said, yeah, let's write this together. And so we did that, and we released Legionnaire, and it just blew the doors off. Like it hit us way harder than we expected to hit. Like we were thinking maybe by book 4 or 5, people would kind of pick up some traction. Mm-hmm. And we got it with book 1. But basically it was just us running to write something that we wanted to read. And it hadn't even gotten to that point with Star Wars where people were really dissatisfied. Like there was an optimism about being able to see episode 7 and 8 and 9 and all that stuff.
Right.
But we were just like, hey, this is going to be fun. This is going to be us writing sort of a modern update to military fiction and take in elements from other things that we grew up loving. And like Nick has said plenty of times in the past, just playing with action figures in the sand. And it resonated. And so, but that was it. It was just something we wanted to write.
Yeah, I definitely, because I heard a lot up to that point about military sci-fi, and it didn't really interest me. It's not something I feel like I could write, and it sounds too much like military. I'm not really into the military, but I went ahead and picked that up because I heard about it, I think on Keystroke Medium. No, I heard it on another podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but I heard you guys talking to them about Galaxy's Edge, and it was like Star Wars, but not Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that sounds cool. So I picked it up and I read it, and I was like, wow, this is like really, really awesome. And it's like, okay, you made the stormtroopers really awesome and like expert marksmen and all sort of stuff. And I thought it was great. And then I listened to the audiobook and I'm like, he's reading it wrong. It's like in my head. But no, so what, how did you guys, because I can tell it, like you go into it and it's you got like M4 rifles and you got like an NBT tank and all these terms. You do a great job of weaving those in without just this big long list of stuff, but keeping the story moving. How did you guys develop the universe? And did you develop beforehand? Did you make it up as you go? And how did you weave it into the story like that?
I mean, on the tech side, I read a lot of military fiction. Nick is a U.S. Army veteran.
Oh, well, thank you for starting, Nick.
And I was in a military family, so like in a way we serve too. We just don't get shot at. So
yeah.
It's slightly different, but it's a sacrifice.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm grabbing Nick. I'm grabbing your thank yous.
Yeah.
No, and I read a lot of combat memoirs. It was just something I studied. I was a history minor. So the tech part wasn't very difficult for us because we just said what exists now and what can we logically think about evolving into the future. So that part was pretty simple. As far as the story arc, Nick can give you a good rundown of how we came to that full 9-book series.
We just made it up. We just thought, how can we get more money? And then we thought, well, we've got to make it. No, we had a pretty
dry.
We just thought, like, if we keep making stuff up, they'll give us money. Now, which is really, basically writing, because if
well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, if you weren't getting paid, then you'd just be a lunatic. Like, like, hey, I've made something up, everybody, and I'm giving it away for free, and everybody's like, no one cares. So
Which feels that way at first, anyway.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every person feels like that, and I think, like, what Jason was talking about, how we developed this. Like, I had some success. Jason had some success with his series. Like, we had people that liked us, but there was a moment where the paradigm. I'm gonna cough real quick. Was shifting inside of Amazon. And people were really wanting to get into series and arcs. And I don't think that was my natural inclination. I'd been led down that path a couple of times. But I'm kind of happy just to write a standalone story and then walk away and, do as many awful things as I can to the character. Yeah, I ruined your life, and then just got someone else clean this up. And what we saw, happening in Netflix and other smart people like Chris Fox told us, and Richard Fox, the two Foxes, they're not related, but they write excellent space marine and space opera fiction. You should check them out. And Chris Fox also has a great series for authors called Six Figure Author. Highly recommend that. But they basically were hipping us to, hey, there's a binge audience out there, and if you're willing to provide content on almost a monthly basis, they're willing to they'll come in there. We lost Jason, but he'll be back shortly. So. Yeah. I'll fill. So anyways, if you're going to sit down to write something that's going to be a series, you kind of have to know where you're going. So we did what we did. Hey, you're back, Jason. So what we did is, and I'll just be honest here, that conversation about it being Star Wars, and Jason saying, no, you can't write Star Wars. I'm like, yeah, you can. You just can't write Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. You can write Star Wars, basically all space opera Star Wars, because Star Wars was an amalgamation of things that Lucas took from other Star Wars. So we knew before the whole kerfuffle of the new series, we knew some things that we wanted to do and we wanted to get right, and we knew some things that we didn't want to do. And so if we were going to compare Galaxy's Edge and Star Wars is about the battle of the soul for the Jedi. And our series, because we're both pro-military enthusiasts, and we wanted to write in space marine, we wanted to attract space, marine readers, and therefore military readers. We knew that, a story about the soul of space wizards wasn't going to capture people. So what we wanted to do was write about the battle for the soul of the stormtrooper. And one of the initial taglines that really resonated for people in the Galaxy's Edge universe was stormtroopers in Afghanistan, because there were so many people that were coming back. And I'd seen this article that, this guy wrote about, you join the military and then suddenly you just feel like a stormtrooper. But, I always thought stormtroopers were cool and stuff like that. And I think Star Wars handled them badly by making them terrible shots. Right. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at that and examine that. I'll say honestly, we knew where we wanted to go through the entire series. We knew who the big bad was. We knew what we were heading towards. But at the same time, as we wrote the series, we took reader input and we saw what they liked and we saw what they didn't like. And we actually made a couple of mistakes that we were able to fix. And we were able also to hear what people wanted and drive in on that. So, we didn't make some critical mistakes. Like, Jason had this whole thing about wanting to have like a space actor who was like a clown. And I had to back him off of that. There was some very inappropriate storylines with that.
Technically, it was a mime.
It was a mime.
A mime?
He wanted to call him Phoba Bet. I'll be honest. I may have had my, no. But the big thing now in writing books and the beauty of social media is you don't actually use social media to find your readers, but you do use social media to curate your readers. And they really want to take ownership in part of your series. They want to get in there and tell you the things that they like. So we knew where we were going. We knew what we wanted to do, but at the same time, we were able to listen to people and see what they wanted and what they liked. And we were able to refine and hone. And I'll be honest, we finally landed on that about book 5.
Okay.
Where the story really coalesced. But Jason and I are big believers in, some people would call it serendipity. We would call it God. And so we knew that everything that we were doing was for a purpose and for a reason. Mm-hmm. So the first 4 books really actually, even though they're all gripping and thrilling and it's fun, what they really were doing is they were a long form set piece of telling you what the universe was all about. If you look at Joe Abercrombie's books in fantasy, he kind of did the same thing. Like you read the first few books and you're like, where's this going? And then you finally figure out, oh, this is exactly where it's going. And so about book 5, really like the main story took off. And that's when like people suddenly began to say, oh, I know why you wrote book 3 now. I get it. I know why you wrote book 2. Like there's a little bit of a departure between book 1 and 2, but it's really weird. Book 2 provides so much texture to the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So like it's weird. There'll be people who'll be like, I'm out. I don't want to, and other people are, and that's the cool thing about it. They're like, oh no, you have to stay with it because there's a reason for this. Mm-hmm. So I think both of us would like to take some sort of Lucasian George Lucas, like master plotter thing. But no, we were open to the adventure and we were open to input, and we definitely knew where it needed to begin and where it ended. So that was a very long answer.
No, that's comprehensive. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's cool. So you said you made you adjusted it to what the fans wanted as you wrote. So you didn't release them all at once. You like wrote one, released it, and just did it like every month like that.
Yeah, we had it in our mind to do it as a rapid release method, which is what Chris Fox and Richard Fox were kind of hipping us to, that there was this new sort of binge Netflix content thing. And again, we knew exactly where we were going and we knew what we wanted to do. But at the same time, when readers, when we were identifying our audience, we knew how we needed to tell them. Mm-hmm. With the standalone and other entry points into the series, like Order of the Centurion, the Tyrus Rex novel, Imperator, we were responding to surveys that we ran inside our group. Like, hey, if you could know more about this universe, what would you want to know? And I think once you start creating a series, there's a goal, and I don't know that we've necessarily cracked this goal yet, but about creating other entry points into the series to reach different audiences. So we were able to kind of identify, okay, people want to know more about this. So we'll try an expanded novel. I think it's actually a problem for a lot of writers is that it's hard enough to write a book. And you've got this story in your head, and you've got the story that you want to tell. And you think like you were just talking about when you heard R.C. Bray read it, and you're like, he's reading it wrong. When you read it, like you get this fixed image in your head of what you want it to be. And the danger is you could be missing out on some of the things that the readers are telling you, like, hey, you need to go over here and you need to do this. And I'm not saying, you shouldn't write by committee. But at the same time, Jason and I have it much easier because we talk every day about the plot all day long. Yeah. And we're constantly challenging each other with ideas and stuff like that. If you're a single writer writing, you're working in a room all by yourself.
Right.
You could definitely be missing out on some pearls.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's what I was going to ask you, because you guys had that community that gives you that feedback. What did you do to establish? I mean, obviously, you guys have both had some readers. So did you try to create a Galaxy's Edge Facebook group or something like that, and you started posting in there and asking people what they wanted? How did you establish that communication with your readers? Because that's where I'm struggling, is trying to get them to answer me.
Right. Yeah, that's tough. We did have existing readership, but we actually made it a point because we knew we were departing from what we typically wrote. So we made a point of not relying on them. We said, let's just start assuming we have no readers whatsoever, because there's no guarantee that the person that wants to read, post-apocalyptic fiction that Nick is writing is going to say, well, now I want a futuristic military science fiction that's steeped in realism. And obviously that wasn't the case for my readership. So what we do is sort of a basic tenet of marketing, which was to say, okay, we know that this is the story. And we were confident that a certain type of reader was going to respond to that type of story. Like, I think a lot of times people get caught up in this idea that any reader is good enough. Mm-hmm. Like if they read, that's what I want. And that's true, like down the road. That's true when you've really established yourself and you're J.K. Rowling and someone's like, oh, sure, I'll pick up Harry Potter. Why not? Usually I'm just reading Lee Child, but I've heard lots of stuff about it. That's not what you want when you start. You want to have the people that are your ideal audience. Not the most coveted audience, not the audience that will get you the most money fast, the ideal audience, because those are the people that are going to read it and say, this book was written for me. And then they're going to find their friends who are just like them and say, hey, dude, read this book. And so we just sort of started talking about it on social media. We set up a website. We set up like some small sort of insider Facebook groups. We actually charged in 2016, we were charged. We had our in-house Patreon type service that we built ourselves, and we said, hey, if you want to follow this along, go ahead. It's $1 a month, and we will send you this chapter as we write it. We'll send you these stories as we write it, and that just kind of grew by word of mouth. People were reading what we were doing, and they're saying, this is awesome. I can't wait for the final book. And then when we sent the Legionnaire, they were just blown away by it, and so then we started to feel like, okay, we think we've got something here. We know that we're talking to the right audience. We asked them who else they read, and then we went to those authors when it was time to launch and tried to work with them to help spread the word. But essentially, we were just cultivating just by talking and seeking out our ideal reader, which is going to be different for everybody because everybody puts a different twist on their books. Like if our book included a high fantasy element and there were orcs in space or something like that, we wouldn't have marketed it the same way that we're marketing this one. That's a different type of reader. So you have to be really confident, sure of what you're writing, and you have to be able to know that this book is going to appeal to this reader. What a lot of people is they kind of blend a lot of different things together. And the more things you blend, like the more you dilute sort of the core genre, the more specific your reader is and the harder it is to find them. So that's the challenge I think that Nick and I both put to anything. How do I find readers is how well do you know your book? Like just have to be completely honest with yourself. You have to know inside and out, and you have to be honest about it. Like when I first wrote Till Death, I wouldn't have said it was romantic at all. Like I'd have been like, oh sure, there's a girl, but it's not romantic. And so I didn't market it that way. But then when I find all these female readers who are like, oh, I love this story, I was like, oh man, I was lying to myself. I was lying to myself about this book. But it cost me. We didn't do that with Galaxy's Edge.
Author.
Yeah, that makes sense. My first book, Half-Orc Redemption, it was I just wrote it as a high fantasy, epic fantasy, and it comes from a D&D background. The main character was a D&D character that I decided I'll write a book about him. And but I'm a Christian, and I think a lot of things about Christianity are really cool, and so I put a lot of them in the book. I backed up on some of them, but there were still some small elements in there. And I put it out there, and I started getting these 1-star reviews saying, "Oh, this is just preaching Christ. Oh, this is all everything." And this is like this terrible thing, just ripping on the book. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't post it as a Christian fantasy because I didn't think of it that way." And I talked to Justin Sloan. I asked him if he had any suggestions. He said, "Just label it as a Christian fantasy." I'm like, "Oh, okay." That's like I didn't see it that way, but apparently the people that were reading were seeing it that way. So I went ahead and put that on there, and I haven't gotten a single 1-star review since. I haven't gotten very many reviews, period, but I haven't gotten more 1-star either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think with my book, that would have been the launch strategy. Like right from the start, you're saying, "Oh, I see you. I see you in the background." If that's how you launch, you're good.
Right. Okay. Hey, Gwenny, can you let Daddy do this right now?
Say hello.
You want to say hello?
Yeah, and then go back.
Okay, say hello real quick.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
She's the queen of this house and just knows that she can do anything she wants, and Daddy will just like, whatever.
It's all right. It's going to go viral, just like that BBC News clip.
Yeah. I don't think I saw it. I'll have to look that up now. Oh, is that the one where the dude's like doing some report and then his two kids come waddling into the room and like the wife like reaches in and like yanks them? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. I have seen that one. So have you both been writing for a while, or have you? Where did you guys just start writing on your own, or did you guys like learn at college or something like that, or how did you guys come in writing?
I'll let Jason go first.
Yeah, so we both have different paths before we linked up. I didn't publish my first book until 2015, and that was self-published. And that was self-published largely because of two experiences. One, my wife was an English major. She wrote a really great book, and she spent a long time playing the game, getting the rejection letters, having agents say, yeah, I'm going to represent this. And then nothing happening, and then you got to wait for your window to reopen up. Just so she had the typical experience, and she just went through that, waiting for that book to get published, until we started to have children, and it was like, all right, well, now I don't have time to do this. So that kind of soured me, even though that's how it goes. I get that, but then I started to see the advice of people like Nick. And Joe Conrath on self-publishing. And I was like, boy, just from a business perspective, this makes way more sense than the way things are going now. Yeah. So I went into it right from the get-go thinking I'm gonna do this myself. As far as writing, I've been writing for a long time. I was a journalism major in college, but everything I wrote was just kind of for me, just write down in my own notebook, have my own stories, have my own scripts, and then I said, well, let me see if I can do this. And so that's when my first book came out. And so that's my story. It was very much on the tail end of that first indie wave. And I never bothered and have never since bothered looking at the old traditional model. But Nick is a different story.
I'm a different story.
Yeah.
Let's see. I always wrote, always when I was a kid and everything like that. I wrote in the Army, and I would just submit short stories. And then I started to write my first novel, and I was doing good, and I got a New York agent out of that, and he tried to sell it, and he couldn't sell it. And then about 2011, I was, self-publishing was a sort of a dirty word before 2011. It was the real estate agent at the end of the bar trying to sell you books out of the back. and someone said, hey, this Amazon KDP thing is pretty cool. And so I'd written this sort of post-apocalyptic novel that was like The Road, and I gave it to my agent. He's like, this is too much like The Road. And I was like, yeah, but The Road sold a lot of books. It was Oprah. And he's like, I hate Cormac McCarthy, which is about 50% of all people say, even though it's great. And so I said, well, I guess I'll try this KDP thing. And I started reading Joe Conrath's blog, and I read back over 2 years. I challenged myself to do it as best as I could, and I didn't have an editor, and I tried to make my first cover, and then I was like, oh, this sucks. So I hired a cover artist, and then he disappeared on me. But I finally got a cover. I got the book up. I spent about $1,500 getting it up, and it sold 2 copies the first month, and I was like, ooh. Yeah. And then it sold 8 copies. I was like, oh, my wife is like, hey, you spent $1,500 and Joe Conrath's making $69,000 a month. When are you going to make that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, but then since everybody in this conversation is a Jesus freak, I can say, then God did a miracle. Started selling about 15,000 copies a month. And I had no idea why that happened. It was totally God. I did not understand publishing. I just put it up, and it just resonated. That was called The Old Man in the Wasteland. It just did really, really well. And then HarperCollins came, and then I went back to that agent. I said, hey, remember that book you didn't want to represent? HarperCollins and a bunch of other publishers want to buy it, because that was what was happening in 2011. They were trying to buy up indie authors.
In your face, agent.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's like, I want to represent it, which was a huge mistake because he is a terrible. And so he started a little bidding war, and I ended up at HarperCollins. And I was like, yay, this is everything every author ever wants, ever. And it was just an absolutely miserable. It's like what people say about boats. Like the happiest day of your life is the day you buy a boat, and then the other happiest day is the day you sell it. And I don't believe that. I'm determined to buy a boat so that I can learn. But it was kind of true with publishing. It was like it just started off to be a miserable experience. They didn't know what to do with Amazon Indies. I would sit in on meetings where they would say, "Boy, we sure would like to get rid of Amazon." And they really wished Amazon would just disappear down a hole. They hated Amazon, and my whole game was on Amazon. That's where I had 69,000 sales, and that's where I would tweet links to the book, and they'd be like, "Oh, please don't tweet Amazon links. You have to tweet it in house." And then their UI system on their in-house distribution system was horrible. No one could buy anything, and they would send me to conventions, and there would be no books for me to sign. And I was pretty sure they wanted to fire me. But then I wrote another book for them. I wrote a trilogy in that series. I wrote another book called Soda Pop Soldier, and they basically bought that because of the title. They're like, "Oh, it's Space Marine. We always buy that, and that title's cool, so we'll buy it." That book did critically really well, and again, they didn't know how to launch it, but people liked that book. It was a good book, but it just Big Pub does not know how to sell in this market now, and they don't know how to sell specifically the method that Jason and I use. Which, if there's a lot of writers listening, there may be readers or writers, but if there's a lot of writers listening to this podcast, Jason and I have a very specific launch method, and I'm not trying to tell you anything here, but we basically broke it down into a for sale podcast. So if you're interested in knowing how to launch books the way that we launch books, and we have a lot of sales. We have about close to $2 million in revenue in sales. You can go to galacticoutlaws.com.
I'm sorry, you figured it out there. What was that again?
You can go over to galacticoutlaws.com into the night market, which is our sales area, and we have a for sale podcast that you can purchase and listen to there. If it doesn't work for you, we'll give you your money back. About $100. But
that's actually exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah. So it'll basically teach you how we did it. We use all the numbers, we break it down, we show you how to do it. There's even a Facebook group you can join. Everybody kind of helps each other along to kind of work through the process. You can also just buy Chris Fox's six-figure author books. Those are really great too. We basically learned from him. He's an excellent teacher. So my experience with HarperCollins was miserable, and we finally actually had a falling out over something that I wanted to write that offended them. And he said, "You can't write that." And I said, "I'm going to write it." And they said, "If you do, you're finished." And I was like, "Great. I was done with you anyways." Then I went back to being an indie, and I never had my success back what I had with The Old Man in the Wasteland, but I was selling books and looking at KDP, and that's fun. That is the most fun. And then Jason and I were in a project of like a super band of authors, and then that collapsed by ego, and not mine. And not Jake. And,
yeah, I was the small fry at that point. If we did it again, it would collapse under my ego.
Now it would collapse. Yeah, but it collapsed under other people's egos. And I really liked the cut of Jason's jib, as Mr. Burns says. And he's smart about marketing, and he's an excellent writer. And we get along well, and we have the same belief system, which is what you really need for a partnership.
Yeah.
And so, that's how that led to that. Well, what would you write? And it wasn't just Star Wars. Jason specifically said, I would write Star Wars and G.I. Joe. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, you can write that. And he was like, no, you can't. I'm like, actually, you can. So, and then that just led us to this. But as I said to you in the conversation before this, I had zero expectations for Galaxy's Edge. Right. I just, maybe, but, I was probably working on another zombie novel. That goes to show. Maybe you shouldn't buy that paid podcast. So, but it's, what indie publishing really breaks down. And I'm sorry, this is probably like, if you don't want to do this right now, you should not write books and publish them on Amazon. But what it is there is no magic button that you can hit and get instant sales. It's every day learning how it works, because Amazon shifts the algorithm constantly and new things happen. And, like suddenly reviews are not important anymore. And now it's, this feature or whatever. But if you love kind of publishing, and you love marketing, and you love writing books, and you love listening to podcasts like this, or listening to gurus, or, you kind of got to listen to everybody. And some people are just blowing smoke, but even the people blowing smoke are generally right about one or two things. And if you're willing to constantly learn, and then you're willing to have your own metrics to test, and you're willing to try things, and you're willing to invest, you can make money you could probably, as Chris Fox would say, you could probably make a living at publishing your own books within 5 years, if you're willing to do all those things. I have a tendency to agree with that, but it requires some effort and things like that. And so that was my publishing experience morphing into our publishing experience.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, if you're willing to do these things, like I don't love marketing. I love writing. Technical stuff I get tripped up on, and it gets tedious and mind numbing for me. But I think it's that willingness to engage those things that you're not necessarily so good at, but learning it and applying it, and then change. It allows you to learn it better if you're willing to learn it and to apply it.
Yeah, you can challenge yourself and grow, which you absolutely should do, so you don't get Alzheimer's.
Yes.
But it's a gig economy now, and even Jason and I, we go hire other people, and a lot of people will work for you at a pretty low rate, or will come in and bring in their expertise. But you can hire the people that publishers used to hire. Like if you need help with marketing, we can give you the name of somebody, a really smart marketer who can help you, and she's taking on clients.
Yes. What's her name? If you want to do it off the air, that's fine.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we don't want everybody to go rushing to her, because she's only got so many slots left. So.
Yeah.
You got.
I understand. Okay, so I'm a little bit of a language nerd. Haven't had an opportunity to pursue linguistics, but I love it. I got Building Your Fantasy, or the Language Creation Toolkit. Scott Moon recommended it, so I got that, and I'm trying to work on language for my own fantasy novel. I noticed, like with Skriz and with the Kublarans, you guys have, it sounds like an established language. Did you guys actually just throw kind of random words in and kind of try to make it sense, or did you actually kind of create a skeleton for language and then go with there?
So Nick wrote most of the Wabanki language, and I wrote most of the Kublaran language, because we found it does not work for one person to start a language and then the other one to try. So it's like, so when we co-write, I'll put a bracket and I'll be like, hey Nick, fill in some Skriz language here.
It's like this. Well, Jason and I both have, I only recently discovered actually this about Jason. I didn't know it, but both of us have an affinity for languages. I was a linguist in the Army, and Jason,
that's cool.
Jason trained or had the opportunity to get a scholarship to learn German. So
yeah, I just forget them is my problem.
Yeah. Like it's weird. This is a point I have with a lot of authors. Is they want to make up languages and names of planets or like sagas, and like a lot of the times it's just the names are jarring. It's not good, and like everybody falls into some common traps because they've sort of been taught from Star Trek: The Next Generation to call everything, ARI, the Andari saga, and it's like you're looking at a dozen novels that kind of all sound the same. Mm-hmm. It's more of an acting thing, really, and I think that's where Jason and I get it. Is like if you actually read Skriz and Tyrus Rex's Conversations of the Kublarans, what you're doing is that Star Wars thing where the alien jabbers in sort of a language that's similar. Like in Jedi, the co-pilot, what's his name, Jason? Lando's co-pilot. Yeah, his language is fairly Southeast Asian, and so you can hear that. Now, I know that they had a linguist actually write out stuff, but really what it is it's the actual character that you can understanding, reinterpreting what they said. We all learned that from Charles Schultz from the Peanuts things when they would talk off screen to the teacher. And the teacher would just go wah 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 wah, then the character would basically tell you the information. And so the trick with languages, or our trick, or my trick, or whoever's trick, is just to create a language for that race that sounds like maybe a language on Earth. So like the Wabangi have a very specific languages that uses a lot of, if I remember correctly, it uses a lot of words that end in "oo," and then there's some cat noises. As ridiculous as that sounds, and it's really fun to make RC Brace say that stuff. he like got really torqued off one time, which is great because is now going to record the first Tyrus Rex novel, which has this awesome conversation with a droid that thinks it's a certain race within the Galaxy's Edge universe, and that race is very well. It is Japanese and Asian, but it's really like just a hash, and so it'll be fun to watch him try to tongue twist through that droid doing or bot doing that. But then it's really the character that's in the conversation that you can understand that speaks English that really is actually giving you the information. It's just, and then I think there's a lyricism and a musicality about it, and that comes through. For me, that comes through how I edit, which is I edit out loud, like I'm reading an audiobook. And so, you know, you can hear words that don't work. It's just got to have that sort of like ba-dump, 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 keep the flow of the story. And that's where I think a lot of authors pick tongue twister names because they're trying to stand out. Because it seems like sometimes, like Jason and I were just talking about this, like, you know, when you name like a space organization, every great space organization has been taken. And so you end up, you know, making these ridiculous names when you can just use the name, you know, there can be a USNC, you know, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think, you know, I give long answers, but here it is. At the end of the day, I see a lot of people spending a lot of their time inventing things out of whole cloth when they can just take things that are there and make them their own. You can't rip other people off verbatim, but that's generally with concepts and names of ships and, you know, things like that, or people. You can take something that's there. It doesn't mean it's that other thing. You know, people spend a lot of time, you know, driving themselves crazy trying to come up with new stuff. You can just use what's there.
Mm-hmm. That's like really sound advice. I'm creating languages because I've always wanted to create languages just for fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
I'm a con like at heart.
It worked for this one author that I like, J.R.R. Tolkien. He never was big, but linguist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, I think that Nick touched on a feature for Aliens that we did with the Kublarans too, which is we let the reader say, okay, they're like this. Like we don't spend a lot of time going into detail and trying to sketch out a drawing through text of what a alien looks like. But like the Kubs, you know that they're frog-like in general. They have air sacs, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so the thought process is that this is, you know, if you take an evolutionary theory, which in some ways is easier than trying to add a theological construct to a fictional universe. Right. If you take that and you say, okay, these were frogs, and now they have reached a point of sentience, or at least that's the base ancestry, just for our mind to make that connection. Then little things like, well, how would they communicate? What would they do with their tongues? That's where like the clicking and things like that came into, was just, this is how they're going to communicate. So their language needs to incorporate that, even when they're trying to speak galactic standard, you know, which is of course English. Right. Even when they're trying to do that, it's going to show up. And I think that those are minor things, but it's easy to remember. So Skriz isn't going to sound like a Klingon because he's feline in nature, and the Kubs, you know, they're not going to have a high elfish language because, you know, they're amphibious frogs, right? They're going to, you know, and stuff like that. And at least I heard R.C. Bray had fun with that one, but he took a long time. He had to keep pausing to get those clicks in, but he did a great job with it.
Oh yeah, he did fantastic. It was really annoying listening to them actually because of all the clicking. It's like, oh, shut up! Just go to the main character.
Just makes them hate you more.
Yeah,
you gotta hate the bad guys more.
No, he did a fantastic job with that, I thought, and with the narration and the storytelling aspect of that. It was you know, I like how the fact that you guys took what the natures of the aliens and tied that into how they speak, because it makes logical sense to me. Like what you're saying, Jason. Like, you know, think the frog wouldn't speak High Elvish. But it's interesting that the frog people are on a desert planet.
Yeah. So, in fact, we're actually writing a book right now called Takeover. And so the big spoiler is going to be that we're going back to Kublar for this. It's kind of a bridging book between book 9 and then season 2. And so Afghanistan, which was the inspiration for Kublar, is landlocked. Kublar itself does have seas. And so the Kubs that Victory Company were dealing with were the mean, dirty inland Kubs. And there's a coastal aspect that's much more like the big green zone capitals. And so we're going to kind of just sort of shed a little bit more light on that planet and revisit it, all the years after Legionnaire took place.
That's cool. Definitely want to read that one. Oh, no, I forgot what I was going to say about that. I lost it. Oh, well.
Yeah, we've been creating a lot of races, and it's kind of fun. We kind of stuck to, we didn't want to get like weird, and as one Legionnaire just sums it up brilliantly in Legionnaire, a lot of the galaxy ends up sort of like animal and humanoid, and that's just kind of fun. Like, I think that's a big thing about this series, and it goes back to my earlier rant just about keeping it simple. For a long time in science fiction, things got unfun with hard science and people saying, no, you can't have hyperdrive.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, no, we just want to do this. It's fun. We don't know why, blasters and blah, 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 but it works. And there's a moment where you're like, well, maybe no one will buy this, but obviously due to our sales, it seems like, people, I think just the way the culture is right now and the animosity and, everybody declaring fatwas on each other, people are looking to get into a book and a little bit of fun. And if you need to bend a few laws and not get everything, copacetic, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, but the reader walks away and has a fun time, well, great. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a bit of a bore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a science fiction author whose work I really like, and he's old school, but he was talking about how, well, you can't just have a pink-skinned alien or a blue-skinned alien unless you explain why their diet would affect their pigmentation. And I couldn't disagree more. It's like, who cares? Yeah. Who cares? Like that's what ruins it. It's just like, they're blue-skinned, get the picture in your head, and let's go have fun.
Right.
That's our approach. But yeah, there is that kind of group that says, well, if this character is going to have pink skin and it's going to remain pink, we need to go over what they're eating that's causing that pigmentation. It's like, that is the worst choice you could make.
Yeah.
For what we're trying to write.
Yeah, because that would appeal to maybe the hard science fiction readers, but then you lose your space opera audience.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a certain amount of even fantasy, you want to make things make sense and have logic. But okay, so maybe for my books, like, okay, a mixing of an orc blood and human blood makes him super strong. Why? I don't know. It just does. Just keep the fantasy mystery fun element, and just tell the story and explain only as much as you need to make the story make sense.
Mm-hmm. There's a cautionary point that I would bring into this a lot of the times is sometimes like the vibe kill in writing, it comes from other writers. Big thing, like the. A lot of other writers or wannabe writers want to come in and sort of like make you do it right because they have some very specific things and everything like that. But what you find when you talk to the readers is they didn't care. They just loved that the tentacle people had 2 tentacle arms and were squids, but the males had 8 arms. Like, they didn't need to understand sort of the evolutionary process of why that came together. They just thought that a female fighter pilot who had tentacles instead of arms, and that made her a better fighter pilot because she could, sort of, move about the controls like an octopus. They just dug that part. That was fun. Me having to go in and explain it or whatever. So it's a big thing that I have for a lot of writers, and it's an emphasis that I'm pushing this year. When people allow me to rant at them or guru them, is just start picking readers over writers. A lot of the times we as writers, you look at your Facebook page or you look at whatever, and you have all these writers. And the thing about it is writers don't buy your books. And they're the one to tell you why you're doing it wrong because they're doing it right. But the reader is the first one to just gush over your book and like, I love that thing. Writing is hard enough, and sometimes when you don't have all the great sales, it's such a bad deal. But spend more time with your readers. I would challenge every reader out there. Do one thing this year: you go find a reader and hang out with them. And you know, but we're the fastest ones to run to conventions and hang out with other writers who are never going to buy our books and are going to give us a hard time because we get, you know, because the pink-skinned alien is in direct sunlight. They're like, oh, vibe kill. You know, I'm going to hang out with a reader who just loves the fact that, you know, we militarized blasters. That the N4 is a lot like the M4, and that if you go back and listen to the Tin Man short story, did you listen to that story?
I didn't. I want, that was one of the ones I was going to get. So.
Okay. Because that's free over at galacticoutlaws.com, and R.C. Gray recorded a free audiobook that you can have.
Nice.
That's Magnet. Now, we will acquire your email address to tell you about all the wonderful things that we have.
Oh, gee, darn.
Yeah, but including our subscription service, which is really the way to go forward now that we made an exclusive audio deal with Amazon. You can actually get a lot of content. It sounds like I'm closing like Gene Simmons. If you've ever listened to Gene Simmons, he closes on this level. But anyways, go over and listen to Tin Man. It's really cool. But it's, you know, like if you go back to that conflict, which is the Free Legionnaire, they're using N15s, you know. So it's just kind of, you know, yeah, we did all that stuff. It's fun. Readers dig the fun as opposed to, well, you know, you can't do that. You know, there's no such thing as a blaster. Lasers, people have tried to do it. Lasers diffuse out over certain things. We're like, we don't care. We're kind of,
yeah, right, exactly.
Vaped this guy's head with a blaster. That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, it's like,
yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was going to say, like, people are like, well, it's a laser, right? We're like, no, it's a blaster. It has kinetic force in a blaster bolt. Like, how does it work? You know, like, yeah. it's thousands of years in the future. How should I know? Like, if I could create that right now, I'd be rich in a different way.
Okay. Yes. How does the microwave work?
Yeah, exactly. Can't figure out today's technology. Yeah, and I was like, I mean, I'll be listening to stuff like that, and like I was listening to Galactic Outlaws earlier, and the point who finds his 2 Legionnaire buddies dead, and he's like just zigzagging away, and it's like Hazen Keel just shoots him in the back with a blaster bolt, and a thought runs through my mind, like, okay, it's a laser, it probably would go on forever. It's like, okay, throw that out. It's just, you know, cool story. It's like, you know, sometimes this stuff occurs to you, but it's like, you know, just it doesn't matter. So just enjoy the book.
Yeah.
Yep. It's an energized particle. It just
energized particle.
Yep.
I like that. I'll use that. So now I got to figure out the difference between phasers and Star Wars type weapons, so I can do my Star Trek versus Star Wars series.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and ultimately it's about what looks cooler when you're carrying it, and that means Star Wars weapons, because the phasers look like controls, right?
Yeah, they do look cool. Yeah. Well, the phaser rifles in Voyager were pretty cool looking.
Well, see, now that's cool. They figured it out by then.
Yeah.
And I would say this: anytime you're designing something like, you know, especially going back to language and verbiage, like there's only so many ways that you can use descriptors to kill somebody. And so, like, give yourself something that gives you, that you can visualize a lot of descriptors. You know, like if you're going to use chemical projections like bullets, you know, like, you know, have a good glossary. You can only say, you know, like, you know, ventilated so many times. Like, you know, he fired and ventilated this guy. You know, like, you want to have a lot of terms at your disposal for the weapon that you're going to use. You know, like, visualize the damage that does to a body, because what you end up having to do is you end up having to describe that damage a lot, you know, in these kind of books.
Yeah, I noticed Tyrus Rex left a lot of smoking holes in people.
Yes. Smoking holes, ventilated. When in one book I caught myself using he vaporized this guy's head into he misted this guy's head, you know, like he's a violent character. He's very
he's got some trouble past.
He is a real problem.
Yeah.
He needs help.
Okay, so I want to geek out. I'm going to see if I can get this right. So I don't know how much you guys actually did a character recreation from Star Wars, but I kind of made some guesses. So Tyrus Rex is your Boba Fett. Azen Keel is Han Solo. Lena is Leia. Obviously, Legionnaires are stormtroopers. I think Chewbacca is somewhere between Skriz and Garrett, and maybe Lena too, because she's got the engineering stuff going on there. And then obviously, Goth Solace is the Emperor.
And Darth Vader rolled into one, right?
Oh, is that yeah? Is that yeah? Because like I know I like the way you named him because it's like very echoing of Star Wars of like a Sith. Got the in there, so it's Goth Solace. Like it just sounds very very cool. So how close was I?
I would say this, like, well, let Jason answer, and then I'll give the right answer.
Yeah. So yeah. So we purposefully did the rope-a-dope on a lot of things, and so like when you read Galactic Outlaws, one of the first characters you're introduced to is one named Hogus, and the whole point of that was for people to be like, oh, this is Han Solo.
Yes, that's exactly what I did, and I was like, oh wait, he died. I must not be Han Solo.
Right. Exactly. And then to make them go, oh, hey, wait. And Lena was the same way. Yeah, Han Solo died too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He probably should have died more like Hogus than the way he actually did.
Yeah.
Lena was the same thing. Like, okay, we wanted to introduce her as a princess, but you find out pretty quickly that the term princess has those quotes around it.
Right.
And she's anything but royalty. She doesn't like the violence of warfare, but she does like making a ship work. So we purposefully took what was familiar, but made sure that they stayed unique. And we admittedly kind of said, all right, we're going to make them think that this is what they've got, and then we're going to do what we want to do with it. But I would say like as far as Chewbacca, he's probably he probably shows up in Skriz and maybe KRS-88 as far as the intimidation factor, the way they use that bot. But I mean, I think Keel is pretty right on. Keel is Han Solo, but we wanted to keep that aspect of his military past and keep him as an operator. But no Luke Skywalker, right? Garrett's Luke Skywalker.
I mean, like everything was, because all of those characters were archetypes. It's in a certain way, it's unfair to say that it's Star Wars, but I'm not going to be one of those people that says, "Oh, it's like you're absolutely right." Like those were things that we were thinking. To me, Tyrus Rex was more of Obi-Wan.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
As Boba Fett, but with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Like everything we did was messed up, like in a certain way. C-3PO is now a murder bot.
Yeah.
Jason gave the right answer. Thanks, Jason. But no, like everything was kind of jacked up, and that was the fun of it because Star Wars in a certain way jacked itself up by making these awesome characters and then like time and time again like completely ruining their like just like fudging their origin stories or whatever. Like the Resistance is all about freedom and equality, except it's led by a princess. Han Solo is this 4 years later with his military service. Luke Skywalker is the worst Jedi ever.
Right. Yeah. Luke Skywalker risks his life in the hopes of redeeming his supervillain father. And then he has a bad dream about his nephew and tries to murder him. The same guy. Yeah. I mean, as we all do, right?
That made no sense. Yeah.
And let us always shudder when we hear "not want" and think of Darth Vader. But the Goth Solace character, you haven't read Imperator, so I can't ruin it for you. But that's his origin story, and what you actually get is a Darth Vader that's trying to. I mean, Darth Vader was trying to save the universe, but I think I think that book makes Goth Solace a much more human character, and up to a point, it's really funny. We can always tell when people are reading the books because they read Imperator and they're like, "Goth Solace is my new favorite character," and in my book 8, they're like, "Goth Solace must die."
Yeah. Well, no, it's like I think that makes like for a really good villain. It's like someone who isn't just like, I'm evil, I'm gonna take over the world. It's like, no, they have reasons that they believe that they're right. Like I think that's why I liked Tarkin so much. But
here's the really awesome thing. You just named like all the characters that you named aren't the primary characters.
Yeah, because Sean,
the kill team is the primary characters, and they're not like anything in Star Wars because they're stormtroopers, and no one ever cares about stormtroopers.
Yeah,
like that, like I said, it's the story about the best. All these other characters are like if Dennis Hopper was ever in a movie, or Christopher Walken, they're not the main characters. They're just chewing scenery, as we call it in acting. Like they're not doing. I mean, they're just being great, but like it's really the other characters that are the main characters. And so you kind of just named like a lot of the, like these are big characters and they're fun. But really, it's and especially as you go into book 5 and stuff like that, you'll find out it's actually these tip of the spear guys with trigger time that are actually the heroes of the story.
Right. Yeah. But it's funny, and it's a fun exercise. But like we've seen like in reviews where people just try to stretch so hard to be like, oh, this is too much like Star Wars, because here's a princess, and we're like, all right, well, princesses exist pretty well. It's a trope. And it's like, oh, and Skriz, he's just like the big furry co-pilot instead of a Wookiee. But we're like, but he's not even the co-pilot, right? Like Robbie is the co-pilot,
right?
Like Keel like makes he's very known. Yeah. So there is that where people, I think, because people want to see the similarities too, and there are similarities there, but because people want to see them, they stretch to try to make them fit. When we kind of purposefully deconstructed it so it wouldn't fit, and like Nick said, there is no equivalent to Masters or XO or Shun, and yet those are the characters that our readers, pretty emphatically said, "Hey, get back to these guys. Get back to these guys. We need to hear about these guys."
It's funny whenever somebody criticizes, "Oh, it's too much like Star Wars." Like, oh, okay, that reminds me of my agent saying it's too much like The Road, and that book was a hit too, and this book is a hit. Like, your idea of slamming us is comparing us to the greatest thing of all time. Like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we'll take that. Sorry, I guess. Those are people like, it can only be Star Wars, and it's like, well, you see how well they're doing with Star Wars right now.
Right. Yeah. No, you guys seem to be doing very well, and I hope that I wish you all success, and I hope it turns into a new. I don't know. Do you guys want it to turn into a movie series or anything beyond the books, or do you think you're just satisfied with the books?
We're in talks right now. We actually have a script in development, and we just made a really big deal with Amazon and Audible specifically, which is an Amazon subsidiary, and they asked for exclusive content going forward for the next 4 years. So what's going to happen is every book is now going to be an audiobook first. So here's where Jason pitch everybody on coming over to the subscription method, because then you actually get to read the books. If you're a reader, you should jump over and join the subscription. It's only a few dollars a month. You get instant access to the books as they become available. If you're an audiobook listener, just wait. You'll get the audiobook first. Then we have to wait a few months or up to 6 months to release the book. But basically, part of that deal is they said, okay, we want to take this over to Amazon Films. And so we have a screenwriter that's actually developing the first episode, and then an episode guide and a series Bible. But then he has some connections, and he's like, "Hey, I know some people that are actually interested in this, besides Amazon." So it's a streaming. It would be kind of high budget. I don't know, but we're definitely open to trying it.
Yeah, and I think that our caveat is always we're open to trying it, but we're not open to it turning into something else. Like, we're not open to turning into something that becomes like a political vehicle, or the nature of the story or the nature of the characters is drastically changed.
Like all the things
for whatever reason
we're not going to do.
Yeah, right.
We'll leave it at that. Like, and that was like early on. Like, so you have to understand that the reader of the Star Wars expanded universe is like a wounded football, like a rescue football. Really not like that sounds funny, but I'm not kidding about that. Like, these are people that kept the flame of Star Wars alive for 20 years, on the Thrawn series and on Jada Skywalker and all this kind of stuff. And then they were told, hey, everything you believed in is nothing, but please come and buy our toys and see our show. And so you're justifiably angry. And that was a market that Jason and I wanted to reach. So part of that is they came on board like little pit bulls, and we were giving them, little pieces of raw meat and trying to lead them out of the cave. Is we had to say, we will never do what they did. We will never sell this. And so that's a part of me that says we probably won't get a film or movie or streaming deal, because we're like, one, we have a belief system that would never allow us to do certain things. but also that was a contract that we made with the readers. We will never betray that, and you'll never have a moment like, you know, Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder and saying, "This was supposed to mean everything for these last movies, and now it means nothing. Here, I'm going to drink good stuff." You're never going to get that.
Right. Yep.
That's awesome. I respect that a lot. And that's the reason I went into self-publishing, is because I didn't want someone, if you know something were to, my books were to take off, and then my publisher goes and sells the rights and says, "Yeah, they can do whatever you want with the books." And I heard a quote from what's that guy did The Firm and all those
Grisham.
John Grisham.
John Grisham. Yeah, he said someone asked him about the movies once, and he said, "Oh, they just took my book and butchered it." It's like, I never want to have to say that phrase.
No, it's a horrible thing. Like you know, these characters are real and alive to us, and we love them. And it would be a shame to suddenly look up and see a travesty, and then, you know, I don't know. Yeah, this is you only get so much to create. Like I was just thinking this morning, I was thinking there's not enough time for me to write all the books I want to write, but to let someone do it for something as crass as money, because what we learned with, you know, Amazon now is you can make a lot of money doing this. And like I think the next evolution is that writers who are making so much money, I know some people are making some serious coin every month, and we're making some serious coin. But the next evolution is we start financing our own films, which Jason is already talking about. It's crazy, but it's not unrealistic. With the streaming services and everything like that, it's a possibility that a very successful author with a very successful brand / franchise could begin to create their own streaming content shows, rather than give it to some group in Hollywood that the first thing they do is some mid-level executive says, "Well, we've got to satisfy this grievance group by making your character into this," and then it hides plot and it's garbage, you know, or, you know, they show some content that you never wanted to have in there. You know, it's just such a cesspit of ugliness. And so the main thing is protecting your brand. And there was always that stopping point. Audiobooks were the same thing. I remember when I was at HarperCollins and I said, "Hey, can I have an audiobook of my very successful book?" And they're like, "Audiobooks don't make any money." Well, shift to right now, audiobooks really are making all the money. Like, paradigm shift. It would be dumb not to say that streaming is next. That's a big investment, but people are making that kind of money now where they could do that. And with red cameras and small independent crews, and even the special effects that I see people producing on the computers, people could make streaming shows out of their own books. It's not impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's really awesome to see that, see film falling the way of self-publishing. It's technology's caught up. Prices come down enough that the average user can do that. Well, I've kept you guys for an hour, and I appreciate so much you guys coming on, sharing all your knowledge with me. Why don't you guys tell us where you can be found online? It says galacticoutlaws.com, and then where else can I find you?
Yeah, so galacticoutlaws.com. If that slips from your brain, you can go to inthelegion.com, and that takes you directly to our sign-up page for our newsletter, where you can find out about how to get Tin Man in ebook format and audio format for free. If you're on Facebook, we have a group called the Galaxy's Edge Fan Club. That's a fan-run group, and a lot of interaction, a lot of really good readers and listeners there. And Nick and I drop in all the time to talk. If you have questions and you tag us, we'll typically show up. You have to do it 3 times, and you have to be looking into a mirror, but we will show up.
Danny man.
Yeah. So those are the easiest ways. You know, we each have our own personal Twitter handles. You know, follow at your own risk, I think, is typically how he heads that. But
yeah, don't follow mine. It's political. Like I use Twitter as some sort of gasoline woodpile fire that I like to throw stuff at.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I tend to be just very boring because I rarely tweet. I get involved in conversations with people directly. But either way, we're on there if you want to find us. But we love, above everything else, to hear from readers and listeners. Like Nick said earlier, that's our number one thing is the people that take time to get involved in the stories we write. We want to take time to get involved in their lives. So we try to make ourselves very available to readers and listeners.
Yeah,
Very awesome, guys. Okay, thank you so much for viewing, and go out and pick up the Galaxy's Edge books. They are awesome, and read all of them, unlike me.
Yeah,
but I'll go
get on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on it. No, I'm gonna get on it. It's just a matter of time and money, because I have 3 kids and they suck a long money away.
Yeah. Well, you got to spend time with your kids first, man. So if you're spending time with the kids
instead of
with the Coobs, that's better. That's better.
There you go. Yeah.
Ask how many kids he has.
How many kids do you have, Jason?
I got 7 kids, man.
Oh!
That's why I have to write so much. I got kids. I got 7 kids.
Wow. Yeah. We plan for 4, and we find we can barely handle 3.
Yeah, we plan for whatever God says. So he says 7 so far, and we're like, all right, well, but he has always provided for us. Like Nick will tell you, Galaxy's Edge came right at the perfect time for us. Like I was like, oh man, Nick, I got another one coming out. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so it's been a real blessing, and I would never trade that for anything else that this world has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My kids, they're such a blessing to me. And like I said, we planned 4, but we found that our capacity is less than that. And we're okay with that. And we're okay to let God tell us where our limits are rather than us determining them for ourselves.
Good for you guys. I have a Ferrari.
That's his baby.
That's okay.
Magnum PI.
Yeah, there you go. Down.
Driving through LA, you can never get past 5.
The problem is I grow a mustache.
Yeah.
So I'm like you guys when it's feeding time at 5 o'clock and you're 7 kids and you're 3 kids. I can't grow a mustache right around my Ferrari.
That's okay.
Tape one on.
Yeah, there you go. Just tape it on like the Old Spice guy.
Yeah, it works good.
All right. Please, guys, any comments, leave them below. If you guys thumbs up and subscribe, I'm going to do more of these interviews with authors, not as cool as these guys, but other authors nonetheless. And
how could that be? I don't know.
I don't know. But thanks for tuning in, and keep writing.